Sten, we're live.
Thank you, Larry, the Liberty Guy. Welcome to another edition, another game. I guess we should start calling these games because we're in the dugout, right? We play baseball games, not editions, right? Yeah, let's start calling another regular season game of in the dugout pregame. I'm Mike Stenhouse, your host. Okay, we've got coming up at the bottom of the hour, 5:30, 4:30, 4:40 or so, Representative Mike Chippendale, who's going to talk initially about, primarily, I should say, about the speed camera bill. You know, they want to put speed cameras everywhere. They want to track your every movement and want to fine you if you go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Is it a money grab? Is it a privacy invader? I don't know. We'll find out. It's probably all of the above, but we'll talk to Representative Chippendale about that. We'll ask him for an update on the very confusing Act on Climate bill process. There was committee hearings yesterday and today in the House and the Senate, and then I can't figure it out. The floor votes, and then when does it get to Governor McKee's desk? The reason we're making a big deal out of that is McKee has not weighed in on this issue, and when the bill gets to his desk, his hand's going to be forced. He's either going to have to veto it, sign it into law, or let it go into law without a signature. And if he vetoes it, he's going to have to fight for his veto very hard. I don't know if he's got the political courage to do that. But the timing of that, you know, this bill is being watched nationally. There's a lot of people. This is a Green New Deal bill for Rhode Island. So we'll talk to Chip not so much about the bill, but about the very confusing legislative process on getting that bill through the House, through the Senate, and ultimately to Governor McKee's desk, which we think will happen. But as we mentioned yesterday, and we'll talk about it with Rep. Chip, we know that others are still hoping it won't get to his desk. In just a few minutes, we'll go through some batting practice, some quick, updates on our discussion last week on transgender boys who were transgender trying to compete in girls' sports. There's an update on that from South Dakota. There's also an update on the larger transgender issue from Arkansas. So we'll update you on that in just a few minutes. We'll spend quite a bit of time in the bottom of this half hour. In fact, most of this first half hour will be spent on the what I'm calling the fake reality show. Get that? The fake reality show for how to choose our next lieutenant governor is thankfully over. My God, what a disaster that was from a process point of view. I don't know if the pick is a disaster or not. We'll talk. Who is Sabina Matos? I can't get a handle on her. I've talked to a lot of people today. I've read up a little bit. I cannot get a handle on this soon-to-be lieutenant governor for Rhode Island. And then, of course, we'll have Representative Chippendale joining us in probably a half hour or so. All right, I want to start off with a little funny, but I'm going to ask you to bear with me because I've had trouble getting this to play properly. But let's see if I can do it. We all know what happened with Joe Biden falling up the stairs on Air Force One. But what you probably don't realize is how many people really, we don't want to see that happen to our president. We don't want to see a weak and feeble and infirm president. So people, next time he walked up the stairs, people gathered to watch. And here it is. Was that mean? Larry Liberty Guy, was that mean?
Not mean, Sten. Not mean.
Not mean? Just good sarcasm.
Maybe a little mean. Maybe a little mean.
Just sarcasm at its best, maybe? I'd say sarcasm at its best. So I'll be curious to see what you thought about that. Go ahead and put a comment in there. What you thought? I thought that was hilarious. I really did. Anyway, okay. That was my little funny of the day. All right, tomorrow we're going to have, of course, Dr. Andrew Boston on at 4:30. Talk about vaccines and COVID. You know, they're trying to gin up the fear again. The new wave is coming again, and the CDC director almost crying. I mean, you know, there's even scares out there from the right wing about the vaccines being unsafe, people dying from that. It's just, I don't know. It's hard for any of us to know what to believe. It's why, you know, it's why we have to have freedom of choice, because you don't know who to believe. You don't know who's being honest with you. And each person has to make their own judgment that's best for themselves and their families, because you can't trust anybody else. Any news, I don't care where I see the news from now. It's I just go in with the assumption that it's either fake news or it's twisted news when anybody makes a strong statement, because you know there's some compromised agenda behind it. So, all right, let's go in the dugout. I'm going to wear my Rhode Island hat today to go with my Green Bay Packers shirt. So there we go. That's probably don't see a lot of that, but that's what I do. And that's what I'm going to do, because I'm free to choose, right? Free to choose. But that is the point. It's just so much information, so much conflicting information. And when they try to do a government legislation or a mandate, even worse, based on one side's view of the world versus the other side's view, it's going to necessarily tick off half or a good portion of the people, which is why government should not be in the job of mandates, you know, as much as they can avoid it, which is why we should be left to choose. Now, we're going to have a really interesting show next week. I'm not sure which day yet, but parents, because of COVID, are having their rights to choose what's best for their kids in K through 12 schools taken from them. Their rights are being not only infringed upon, they're being completely dismissed. And in this case, we're talking about when it comes to participation in athletics. So you'll hear about that next week. Okay. All right. Last week, you remember the interview we had with Dr. Michelle Cretella and with Senator Elaine Morgan about Senator Morgan's bill to not allow biological males to play in girls, women's, or female sports. And it was a really good debate. And I think we got rid of a lot of myths and whatnot. So a little follow-up. You might be aware of the situation in South Dakota on this. Now, you know, in the last year, largely because of her stance on COVID freedom, you know, she didn't want people in her state of South Dakota. And we're talking about Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. She's kind of become a conservative hero. She spoke at the big conservative conference. Of course, she hosted President Trump at the Mount Rushmore. Was that July 4th or whatever that was, that Mount Rushmore celebration? And she's really become a star. But and I can't tell, again, I can't tell if it's for good reason or not, but she's been tarnished in the last week or so. The South Dakota legislature put forth a bill similar to Senator Morgan's bill that would ban biological boys from playing girls' sports. And she vetoed it. She said she vetoed it. She says she agrees with the premise. She said she vetoed it because she was concerned it was so overreaching and included college sports like the NCAA. And because the NCAA was not just a South Dakota entity that she has in any way under her purview. So the state schools, obviously, in South Dakota would be somewhat under her purview, but not the entire NCAA. She claimed if we pass this bill the way it's written, we could get sued. We've been advised the NCAA would sue us and we'd throw out the whole bill, or the whole bill could be stopped. So she wanted to, she didn't exactly veto it at first. She sent it back. There's something a little bit short of a veto, I guess they have in South Dakota. She sent it back for revision. And the revision and the so that would be in her view wouldn't make them legally susceptible. But the legislature said no. 67-2, they said no, we're not going to change the bill. You either sign it or veto it. And she vetoed it. So here is her tweet on that. Only girls should play school sports. So she agrees with the only girls should play girls sports. She agrees with the premise, but the legislature rejected her proposal to change it. So she says, in vetoing the bill, I'm going to also sign 2 executive orders. One that applies to K through 12 athletics and one to do so in college. So it appears like what she's doing here, separating the two. If the executive order for instance, the college gets challenged and there's an injunction of some kind, at least it doesn't affect the executive order on K through 12. So I think that's her reasoning there. And as she has been mentioning all along, she's working with legislative leaders, to further address this issue and a related issue. And she's also talking about putting a national coalition together on that. So here are the 2 executive orders. And let me share these with you as well. So this is the one that deals through K through, this is public school, school K through 12. Only females shall participate in any girls' women's athletic event. Here's the one that deals with colleges, any higher education under the control of the Board of Regents, which is usually, state-backed schools. In Rhode Island, we have Rhode Island College, URI, CCRI, right? I think those are the only schools that would be governed by the Board of Regents in our state. So my question is this, go ahead and put your comments. Does this satisfy you? Because most of you, I'm not sure. I don't know what to think about this. She's saying she agrees with the goal legislation. She vetoed the legislation, but then she issued 2 executive orders largely parroting the legislation. I haven't seen a story that really explains why in any more detail. I mean, I'm just guessing that by separating the 2 bills, if one is challenged, by separating the 2 orders, apparently like she wanted to do in the legislation, if one got challenged in court, at least it wouldn't affect the one at the K through 12 level. I don't know. Are you satisfied with that? Or you might think that transgender boys or biological boys who identify as a girl should be able to play in high school sports. I don't, but what do you think? So tell me what you think. I'm gonna stay on this just a minute longer as I go into the next topic. And if in the next couple minutes there are some comments in the YouTube here, we'll address them. If not, we'll keep moving on. Now, the next related issue was in Arkansas. Now, a little backdrop here. Well, first, let me show you the headline. So Arkansas becomes the first state to pass a bill prohibiting doctors from providing gender-affirming medical care to trans youth. Wow. All right. So what does that mean? That means apparently if there's a youth, now let me see, I'm going to read through the bill here. It passed the Senate 28-7. The governor has not weighed in on it. That's Asa Hutchinson. It said it would save adolescents. And I'm looking for an age here. What's typically an adolescent? Under 16? Under 18? Under 14? The bill would prohibit doctors from offering gender-confirming hormone treatment or surgery to trans minors. So that would mean hormones, any genital or other surgeries, mutilation, some would cause it, to minors. All right, so it says just to minors. So apparently what they're saying is you're not equipped emotionally to make this decision as a youngster. And if you're a doctor, you cannot perform this surgery, even if the person or if the family says it's okay. Now, we do know a lot of families are pushing their kids to become trans. I mean, to me, that's child abuse. I mean, that's flat out child abuse. I even think it's child abuse to yet a very young child make their own decision, even if they weren't pushed into it, and allow it to happen. I don't know how to think about this, Bill. We promote freedom on the one hand, right? People should be able to make their own decisions, but on the other hand, there are parental rights. I'm not seeing anything in here about parental rights, so it looks like it's just a flat out ban. I mean, like on abortion, for instance, right? We often argue that minor girls and women shouldn't be allowed to have an abortion without parental consent. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Not only are young women unequipped to make that decision, but the parents should have a say in their kids. This bill in Arkansas appears to say, even with parental consent, doesn't mention parents at all, you cannot perform this kind of transformative treatments, surgery, medicines, hormones, period. That's not freedom, but it might be wise. So I don't know. All right, let's look at the comments. Republican RJL. I don't like EOs to get things done. Neither do I. So he's right. Executive order can be undone by the next governor. Legislation is harder to undo. So yes, it would be preferable to pass legislation, but for whatever reason, the governor and the legislature weren't on the same. She should have accepted the deal at hand and let the legislature work on bullet testing her revisions. That's a very legitimate attitude to make. But if it puts them at risk of having it challenged in court and an injunction that would allow it to continue, I think that's the governor's argument. You know, if I sign this legislation, it's likely to get an injunction, and until the court case is heard, which could take months or years, this bad practice of allowing boys to participate in girls' sports is going to continue. So I see both sides of the story. This is a tough one. As Larry says, and we heard on the show, boys participating in girls' sports is not just a moral question or a philosophical one, but it's all safety. So, hey, men are bigger, stronger than women. And we heard on the show how in Marshall Mixed Arts, a girl facing a boy who identified as a girl got crushed and had broken bones. It's a safety issue too. And Larry also Hazen, which I agree, parents don't have the right to sterilize a child. And I'm sure you would say parents don't have the right to mutilate a child either, whichever way that sex therapy goes. And Larry's right. Those hormones do often sterilize kids. We know that many of these transgender, what they call gender dysphoric kids, unsure, not happy with their gender, often switch back and become comfortable with their original biological sex. But once you've had the surgery, or once you've had too many hormones, that damage can't be undone. So I listen, I agree. There are always exceptions to a rule. We like freedom. We like freedom of choice. But this has gotten to be a craze. This transgender thing has gotten to be a fad. And I think this legislation in Arkansas is good. All right, let's move on. All right, the charade is over. Finally, we have a lieutenant governor nominee. There's even some discussion though how to say her name. The Governor McKee introduced her as Sabina Matos. I've always heard it said, and I heard someone called into a radio show earlier, said the governor is wrong. It's Matos. She didn't seem to argue. So I'm going to call her Matos because I think that's she's from the Dominican Republic, and that would seem to me to make sense to be the way to say it. But anyway, this has been a fake reality show. All right, what do I mean by that? When Governor McKee made it an open process application for the public to apply for the lieutenant governor position, and then whether he initially wanted to or not, but the media forced his hand to make the names public, to make the applications public, to talk about who are the final 10 and then who are the final 5. I mean, it was like watching a reality show, but it was all fake. Yes, there was a process. It was all fake. We knew 2 months ago. We were told 2 months ago by our sources that it was going to be Sabina Matos. So why did Governor McKee go through this entire fake reality show type public application process when he knew months ago who he was going to select? What's the political? That's obviously political. What is the political advantage to that? Does it just make you seem more inclusive? I mean, groupthink is the worst think. And this fake reality show of a lieutenant governor selection process was nothing more than groupthink. Trying to make the public feel like they're involved. In groupthink, the lowest common denominator wins. Not the best idea. The lowest common denominator. That's no way to run a government. That's no way to do anything. You can have a group to put thoughts out, but you don't base decisions on groupthink. You can take input on groupthink. The person I thought was, again, we shouldn't be picking a lieutenant governor for political reasons. We should be picking a lieutenant governor who would be, God forbid, a successor to the governor if something were to happen. I thought the most qualified of the finalists was Senator Lou DePalma. Now, Lou has moved very left in recent years. He was quoted in the media today saying, I want to also thank Governor McKee, in addition to congratulating Matos, Senator DePalma, who's head of the Senate Oversight Committee, part of the leadership there. He said, I want to thank Governor McKee for putting together an open and transparent process. Fake process. As a participant and finalist in that process, including being interviewed by the governor himself, I can assure you it was both thorough and fair. And I can assure you it wasn't. It was all for show. So we have a Providence City Council president nominated for lieutenant governor. Does that make her qualified to be a governor should something happen? Or is there something else at play? No. Come on. We all know what else was at play, right? Lou DePalma, and I don't agree with Lou on much philosophically, but Lou DePalma was clearly the most qualified of those finalists. But he's a white male. No chance. Anybody would have known that. In today's world, the way politicians suck up to the woke left, there's no way he was picking a white male. Absolutely no way. And everybody should have realized that. And everybody should have known he was going to pick a woman of color. That's just the way the woke mob, it's what the woke mob and media demands. It's why Sabina Matos was one of those real finalists, not the fake finalists put forth and not the fake finalists whose applications or fake applicants in there. The reality was, and we all know this, and not too many people will say it, but I'll say it. The reality was it was going to be a woman of color, period. We all knew that from day one. Now, what else do we know about Sabina Matos? And I've talked to a lot of people today, and it's unclear. Some call her a progressive. Some say she's a moderate Dem, more practical. Some say, she's not caught up in all that culture war woke stuff. But I'm going to show you something in a minute that might make you think about that. One person used to work for the city of Providence under the Tavares administration. And while Matos was a city councilor, said she understands economic development and is very, quote, smart. We're hearing that progressives are upset, though, on the other hand, because she's not an avowed socialist. She's from the Dominican Republic. Her English is good, but heavily accented. But take a look at this. What kind of image? This is a communication she put out. And this is thanks to Roland for sending it to me. It's a statement she put out, posted it on the Providence. She was president of the Providence City Council, posted it on the city council page about the crime that was happening last summer. So, centuries of systematic racism. I guess she's I don't even know what the right terms. She's not an African American, obviously she's from Dominican, but I guess she's a Black Latina. Is that right? I don't know. So that doesn't sound too moderate. Centuries of systematic racism. Diversion programs. Diversion programs are when you commit a crime, you don't go right to jail. Instead, we divert you to some kind of counseling or other things so you can avoid prison time, maybe keep working. It's, it's kind of a right on crime. What would he call, what did we call those bunch of bills years ago? I forget, something on justice bill.
Justice Reinvestment Act.
Justice Reinvestment. Thank you, Larry, Liberty guy. Justice Reinvestment stuff. All right. So that's kind of a moderate stance. Even a lot of Republicans agree with that. Affordable housing. Affordable housing is a battle cry of the left. It's one of those, affordable housing, affordable housing, affordable housing. Again, something, if you know Roadmap Rhode Island or anything like that, does not sound very moderate to me. And then we must support legislation that reduces the number of firearms that end up on our streets. Now, is that very moderate as a Democrat either? I don't know. So some people are telling me she's moderate, but her own words certainly don't make her look moderate. Sorry for sharing my notes with you there. Here's something on my Facebook post from Brian. Very interesting quote. Biden picks the leader of the worst state for business and jobs, Rhode Island, to be Secretary of Commerce. McKee picks a leader of the worst run city in Rhode Island to be Lieutenant Governor. I'm glad they chose someone based on their accomplishments and achievements and not on their gender or race. Now, that's pretty much saying what we're saying or asking the same questions we're asking. What else do we know about Sabina Matos? We know she had her run-ins and is not a fan of Mayor Jorge Elorza. By leaving her city council seat as president, I guess the next in line is Councilman John Igliozzi, who is moderate to conservative by all accounts. So that'll be, I mean, he was always the one vote. You know, there were many votes, I was told, in Providence that would go 14-1, 13-2, 14-1. And he, as the conservative, quote, relative conservative anyway, would be that one. And now he's going to be the city council president. That should be interesting. So keep an eye on that dynamic. Certainly the mayoral race for Providence is altered by this choice of Matos, because she was one of the front runners for that seat. Now she's obviously going to be running for lieutenant governor as part of a ticket. I mean, not formally ticket. There'll still be separate races, but you will see McKee and Matos running sort of together as a ticket. I think Republicans and everybody should do the same thing. And I think we should change that law in this state, that if we're going to keep the lieutenant governor position, which I think we should, but at least they should run as a ticket so they can be on the same page. What happened with Raimondo and McKee was unacceptable. I mean, how do you have two executives who can't even work together? I mean, imagine if McKee were to win and Aaron Regenberger ran for lieutenant, became it. You'd have two polar opposite people. Why would that be good? You might even have a Republican win. Why would, I mean, it doesn't make for good government. So I think they should run as a ticket, and we should change that law. This was obviously done with the 22 gubernatorial election in mind. This was a political move. This was not a move about who is the most qualified to be the governor in waiting. Clearly not. No, only recently installed city council president really is qualified to be governor. I don't know what her business, private sector experience is. We'll have to look at that. So I'll hold back a final judgment. You know, she ran a big company, but I doubt it. I don't know. But he's certainly making a play, Governor McKee, for the Providence vote and maybe for the Hispanic vote when he runs. Now, it's probably not going to help him much in the primary, because in the primary, there's going to be two high-powered Hispanics, Nelly Gorbea and Jorge Elorza himself. So I don't think it's going to help. I don't think it's going to help McKee in the primary very much, maybe a few votes, but he's going to lose other votes potentially from more conservative side or moderate side of things. Certainly could help him in the general election if he survives the primary by attracting those Hispanic and Providence votes. So we'll see. One thing we've heard about Matos, very heavy-handed management as president of the city council. I can't validate this because I don't know, but I've been told that when she became president of the council, she stripped everybody who was her opponent of committee assignments. Just took them off the committees. Screw you kind of thing. That's not a way to govern. You wouldn't want to see that as governor if she becomes governor. Again, this should be about who's qualified to be the next governor. Instead, it's become about skin color. It's become about Providence. It's become about politics. All right, the big questions, and then we're going to get to our guest, Mike Chippendale. I put out a tweet today. Here's the big questions. We don't even know where Governor McKee stands. A lot of these things. Never mind Lieutenant Governor nominee Matos. Where does she stand on the rush to a $15 minimum wage? Where does she, I mean, if she's going to sort of pick up the mantle of being the small business person in the executive branch, which is what McKee fashioned himself to be, then these small business issues are important. Where does she stand on the rush to a $15 minimum wage? Where does she stand on the TCI gas tax or the Act on Climate, the Rhode Island Green New Deal that's working its way through? Where does she stand on other pay equity mandates? Issues like that. Where does she stand? Corporate welfare. Where do you stand on that? Making an uneven playing field, giving money to the big guys and letting the little guys have an uneven playing field to compete on. And then the last question, the really big question, the most important question for me of her is Escogido red, Licey blue, Estrellas green, or Oculus yellow. Do any of you have any idea what I'm talking about? Those are the four. She's from the Dominican Republic. Those are the four teams, the four initial teams in the Dominican Republic Baseball League. And if you're from the Dominican Republic, you can't help it. You are a fan of one of those teams. I played for the Escogido Leones, the Lions, which one of two teams in the capital cities. You can picture Yankees against the Mets. So we had the Escogido. We were the red team, the Escogido Red. I mean, they were known by their colors. Red. The Licey Tigres would be like the Mets. They were blue, the blue team. Estrellas was the green team. That's the famous San Pedro de Macorís, where a lot of great Dominican players come from. And Aguilas is the yellow team from the city of Santiago, where a good friend of mine, you remember the catcher Tony Pena, caught for the Pittsburgh Pirates, came from. So many great players from all of those cities and towns. But I want to know, who was her team? I need to know this. Escogido, Licey, Aguilas, or Estrella. Somehow somebody's going to get me that answer. I copied her on a tweet. She hasn't responded yet. I'm sure she's busy. Probably won't respond. I need to know this answer. If she's from the Dominican Republic, her parents might have watched me play. She might have watched me play, for crying out loud. I was there in 1982 and 84. She might have watched me play. Wouldn't that be something? Anyway, all right. Having a little fun. All right, let's go to our partner in the dugout. Let's bring on our old friend. And he is an old guy, Mike Chippendale. Rep Chip, how are you today? Welcome to the dugout.
Doing fantastic, Stenny. How are you, buddy?
You going to join me in donning a cap today?
Sure. As is the tradition. This one just came out of retirement. Each year the Red Sox have won a pennant. I took the Red Sox hat I wore the most in that particular year, and I retired it.
Oh.
This is the 2018 retired hat. As you can tell by the worn brim, it's seen a lot of action. This is the first time I put it on my head since they broke just about every record in Major League, certainly in Boston history, with the 2018 season. So this is a high tribute to what I am expecting to be a fantastic, entertaining season for the Boston Red Sox.
Fantastically entertaining. Okay. Nice, very nicely done there. Yeah, I'm going to wear my Red Sox cap tomorrow on the show. Now it's supposed to be opening day. It's supposed to rain as well, so I guess there's some question as to whether or not they'll even get the game in. I know you and I have communicated many times on past opening days. I know you're a lifelong Sox fan, and you've even appreciated the fact that I sat the bench for him that one year in 1986. So
absolutely.
All right, let's move on to business. Okay, first, before we get to the main bill, the speed camera bill, I just want to pick your brain on a couple other things. So this whole legislative process, I mean, I used to think I kind of had it figured out, but what I'm seeing on this climate bill really confusing me. So I'm going to put on my screen this is what apparently happened with the Senate bill 78 sub A. So it was introduced, went to a Senate committee. The committee passed the sub A. The Senate passed it. It's referred to the House, and the House apparently passed it yesterday in committee. Is that correct?
Yes, it has to go through the committee before it can come out to the floor.
So even though it's been passed in the Senate, when it's transmitted to the House, it still has to go through a committee first.
Yes, that is our protocol. It does not have to do that in order to become a law. There doesn't even have to be a Senate companion or a House companion to a particular bill in order for it to become law. I think that tradition, if we're going to call it anything, began when certain legislators realized that, hey, this person in the other chamber just got recognition for this bill, and for this great thing they did, and here we are, we're not getting recognized. So in order to keep equity between the two chambers, we have this companion bill system. So that any bill, the Senate version would go to the Senate committee.
All right, so let's look at the House version, which is now in the hands of the Senate. All right, and let's just walk through this. I mean, it's kind of educational for me and our viewers and everybody.
Certainly.
So the House bill starts in the House.
Yep.
Gets a hearing. They put a sub A in. They schedule that. It goes on. It passes the House. Then it gets referred to a Senate committee.
Yes.
And then apparently today, although it's not saying it right here, but I think today the Senate committee is going to vote on this bill. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, you know, I can't speak to the Senate's calendar. I have a hard enough time keeping up with our own, but I do believe it is either today or tomorrow that the committees will pass their respective companion bills.
Now, in the committee, is there public debate or testimony?
Yes.
When the bill's been transmitted?
In the committee process, there is an opportunity.
It says for consideration, because usually with consideration, there's no more public debate, right?
Well, yes, typically, because again, these are Senate companions. So the arguments and the testimony has been heard on the House companion already. So when the Senate comes over, well, what's changed? Unless it was a substitute or something, we typically don't have a debate. Although in the past, when questions have arisen from members of the committee, even though it's a bill that was prior passed in that particular committee, they're always allowed to ask questions because a motion's made to pass it, a motion's made to second it.
Could an amendment be done at this second committee stage? Could an amendment be added?
Yeah, and yes, an amendment could absolutely be added. There's no doubt about it.
Because I talked to one of your counterparts in the House, Chip, and you can tell me if I heard him right, that what they're hoping to do is to get an amendment passed in the Senate committee or on the Senate floor. I don't know which one. And that way you have substantially different bills again, right?
Yep.
And just like what we saw happen with the pay equity bill, the House passed a version of pay equity, the Senate, but since they were substantially different, either they didn't try to, or they said they couldn't reconcile and the bills died. And it seemed like, in that scenario, it's a political scenario. Everybody wins. Hey, we passed your bill, progressive left, but the Senate's version we couldn't accept. So we're just going to let it die.
And you said you know nothing about the legislative process. You just synopsized it right there, my brother.
But here's the question. Why is it happening both ways? I thought only one chamber had to pass the other chamber's bill, and that would be enough to send it to the governor. But it looks like right now, both chambers are passing the other chamber's bill. Do you have to have both?
No, you do not have to have both. Again, one chamber's bill can easily go through that chamber and then be sent to the next chamber and go through them and become law. That is, while I have not seen that done with anything other than, perhaps enabling resolutions from a town or something along those lines, or like the wedding solemnization bills, which we ridiculously spend so much time on every year. It doesn't really happen. Again, it's a tradition because we want that other chamber to get recognition. All right. Or they do. I frankly don't care about recognition.
My last question on this: Are you still hopeful that if there is do you have any hope in either of those two approaches to defeat this bill? That some committee or House on either side will make an amendment that will make them different, or B, that if McKee vetoes this, there are enough flippable votes for people who originally voted for the bill who might switch and vote to sustain a gubernatorial veto. Do you have any hope, or is this a done deal, Chip?
Well, I always am optimistic, right? Until the proverbial fat lady sings, I'm going to remain optimistic that something to improve that bill will occur. And here, cue the dogs in the background in the Zoom call here. I'm always optimistic that that's going to happen. I feel terrible that my dog is barking right now.
That's all right. We love dogs.
It's an unfortunate. My dog, whose name is Mookie, in honor of a great Red Sox outfielder,
great former Red Sox outfielder,
who's now a great Dodgers outfielder. So yeah, I would like to see either a gubernatorial veto, which would obviously have to be sustained by the House.
He'd have to work hard to flip some votes, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but there are a lot of groups, whether folks realize it or not, there are a lot of groups right now doing exactly that. They're working very hard
Okay.
to make that happen.
I'm aware. We are. Others are. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Oh, sure. And there's a lot going on in the background. So, I think it ultimately boils down to whether or not the governor is going to, he's already signaled on the charter school moratorium that he has the veto pen out. It's heated up and ready to go. You don't when you're the new kid on the block, you kind of don't want to over exercise your power. So I think from a political perspective, he may be a little reticent. He might not be so inclined to veto this. What could he do? He could be talking in the background with the legislative leaders saying, hey guys, if you change this, that, or the other, I'll forget about the veto. This is political chess that's going on.
So we just don't know. All right.
We don't know.
All right. One quick question before we get to the main bill here. Do you have a quick comment on Lieutenant Governor nominee Sabina Matos? Do you know anything about her, or do you have a comment at all?
I don't really know too much about the councilwoman. I know that whatever I see on the news, I know that about her, but the interaction with the Providence, with what's going on in the Providence Council from District 40's perspective, I don't have bandwidth to worry about that stuff. So I don't know her that well, but I look forward to getting to know her.
All right. Let's go to your bill that you brought to my attention. You sent me an email and we said, hey, let's talk about it on the show. So this is a bill. It is, I'll share it on my screen here. It's House Bill 5981. There it is right there. Automated traffic speed enforcement system. So basically this would allow for speed cameras to put up on any state road that they chose or could afford to do, right?
Yeah, that's essentially what it says. We had the speed cameras in school zones in Providence, which really got people to pay attention and got people very upset. And, they had to kind of throttle the program back at first. There were the problems. I don't have to go through them all. There were a lot of issues with that. But, ultimately it boiled down to, it was argued and debated on the merits of safety for school children. And who is opposed to safety for school children? No one.
Right.
No
so
one
what's
is.
the premise for this bill then? Safety for people on the road? What's the premise for this one?
Allow the cynic in me to
yes, please.
To elaborate on
please.
Why I even brought this to your attention, because it's a furtherance of what I believe, and what many people believe is, first of all, it's an intrusion on our privacy. When you're constantly under the watchful and punitive eye of Big Brother, questions and concerns start to arise, and that's exactly what happened with the speed camera bill. But now that we're going to go viral, to take a term from the cool kids, now that we're going to go viral with these things, what is the justification other than revenue generation? Someone looked at the money that Providence is raising on these speed cameras, and they said, wow, well, we know Pawtucket already did.
Do we know that that's a lot? Do we know that?
I don't know what the figure is. I honestly don't know, but I suspect that was certainly a driving factor. It's not that all of a sudden the General Assembly became concerned that people were driving too fast and may harm themselves. It became concerned about the fact that it needs more revenue, and revenue.
That is a good question.
Is government speak.
Revenue, yeah.
Oh yeah, we could. I'm sure that if it's not easily available with a Google click, it's something that could be found out.
So, Mr. Cynic, do you suspect this is more Big Brother type monitoring, or do you suspect this is more of a pure money grab?
Yeah, well, it's
or both.
I think it is primarily it's a money grab, but it's contributing to the infrastructure that will be Big Brother, right? So when we had the toll debate, those of us who care about civil liberties expressed concerns about exactly that, being under the watchful eye, and what else can they put on these toll gantries? And so we had put amendments in to try to prevent them from putting speed cameras, from putting, any other sort of thing, something that could check your registration's validity or your inspection. We didn't want them to be used, and we were assured of, oh, good God,
This was the school camera debate, right?
No, this was the truck toll debate, because we were concerned.
Right.
Okay, yeah, the gantries created this perfect opportunity to stick this technology on there, where they could monitor every aspect of our lives. So now going back to the speed cameras statewide, they're going to be creating more infrastructure that can monitor us.
And all right. So let me, before I get to some details about the bill, let me just again go back to process here, a legislative process. I can't. So here is the history of the bill. It was introduced. It was scheduled for a hearing. And who's the primary sponsor of this?
Rep. Kortrevend.
Okay, right here. This one right here.
Yes.
All right. And then it was postponed at the request of the sponsor. Do you know why?
No, I don't know why. That can oftentimes be, especially right now with COVID and the remote hearings and whatnot. That could have just been a schedule conflict. I wouldn't read too much into that.
All right, but then look at what's happening here. Then it was scheduled, and then it says here on the it was withdrawn.
Ah.
It was scheduled to be House Judiciary today, but it also was withdrawn today. So do you have any idea what the actual status of this bill is?
Well, that is what you're looking at is not the system I look at, but it reads fairly similarly. And it appears to me that it was the sponsor either got so much heat on the bill, or a flaw became evident, or someone with the cachet to do so asked her to withdraw it. That would be my guess. That's pure speculation. I cannot get into the representative's head on this issue. Clearly, something did happen, and you know what, Mike? That's why I sent this bill to you, as well as some other people, to look at, because when we shine light on things like this, oftentimes that exposure in and of itself can create enough pressure to make someone rethink.
That's why we do this. Exactly. Yeah. I guess scheduling you to talk on this show scared the dickens out of
well, I wouldn't go that far. I don't know about that.
Right, so here's the official General Assembly website on this.
This one will make more sense to me.
Yeah,
okay.
Scheduled for hearing, withdrawn at sponsor's request, apparently 2 days ago.
Yep. So that is, and it's reporting 3/31 as the date that it was officially withdrawn. Yeah. So that was withdrawn today.
Wow.
Well, that's great. I mean, that I don't know.
We did it, Chip. We did it.
Well, I don't want to do a victory lap quite yet, because oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, but there are occasions where a bill will be withdrawn like that because major rework has to be done, or
as the death out of her, Chip.
Yeah, it could be that. But you did allude to something earlier that I think is poignant, and that is when bills don't reconcile between the two chambers. And I don't even know if there was a Senate dupe on this one here. When they don't reconcile, they will oftentimes sacrifice one for the other. That may happen. I have no idea. I'll certainly keep an eye on that. But we're doing what we need to do by shining light on this issue and letting people know. It's easy enough to say, hey, Chippendale, just slow down and you don't have to worry about it. But when do we stop saying that? When the cameras are on the pole in front of my house, shining on my house, watching everything I do. Hey, Chippendale, if you're not breaking the law, don't worry about it. That's problematic to a lot of people who, again, value our civil liberties.
I kept saying, I got to really read the bill before we get this interview, and I never got the chance to read. Did you have a chance to go through it in great detail?
I went through it in a cursory way when I first alerted you to it. To recall the particulars,
if you don't know, you don't know, since it's kind of moot now, but let's just go through the exercise anyway, if that's okay. You okay with that?
I am, yes.
First of all, was this going to be, was the installation and funding of it and then the revenue stream going to be a state thing or by locality? Do you know?
I should
Was
be
the
able
money
to
going to
tell
go
you
to the
that.
cities or to the state, since they were state roads?
And this question, Mike, and I'm pulling up the bill right now, to see if it's even that sophisticated. It really doesn't appear to be, that comprehensive. So no, it essentially took the existing statute, and wherever it said school zone, it just struck that language. And whenever
But
it
who would
spoke of
administer it? The localities or the state? Do we even know?
that, based on me just looking at it right now on the screen, it doesn't appear that that was assigned to anyone. Certainly, in the original, so it
God's
took the
going to
original.
do it? God's going to do it?
That could, again, that could be the reason it was withdrawn. I don't know. But the original bill, it was implicit, because when you're dealing with school cameras, well, who's going to bear the cost? Well, it's
Right.
going in a school
Yeah.
in a municipality. So clearly
Right.
that municipality or school district,
Right.
which is one and the
In
same,
this case, it's not
is going to be
clear.
paying for it. But when we make it statewide by just simply striking school zones, I think, the good representative in her attempt to broaden this to the whole state didn't consider the question that you just raised. And that may have been brought to her attention, and we may see a Rule 7D come forward in the next few days. And I'm just going to wait for you to ask me what that is.
I'm not even going to go there. It sounds too wonky to me.
Well,
I
no,
got
it's not
it.
actually. This bill can be reintroduced, so everybody
okay.
gets three 7D Rule 7D introductions, where after the deadline we can introduce any legislation we want with permission to speak of blah blah blah. So this bill may be addressing those. Someone may be addressing those shortcomings in this bill and reintroduce it. We don't know. We keep our eye on that stuff, and obviously, were it to rear its head again, of course,
Right.
we'd probably
As
end up.
far as far as you know, from the school camera bill and on this bill, do these cameras only go off when someone is speeding, when it trips the speed, or does it take pictures of every car that goes by and only issues tickets to those that are speeding? Do you know how that works?
I am unaware of the mechanics of that. I'm not even sure if that is in the. I don't believe it's in the original bill at all. We may have other chapters or titles of law that deal with the privacy issue there. But the bill itself
Obviously, it's
doesn't.
one level of privacy. If it's bad enough if it's getting cars that go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, but if it's taking pictures of every car that goes by, that's a whole nother. So we don't know how this would work, right?
We don't, and that's the danger with, or that's the concern for civil libertarians with this kind of technology. That camera has to check every single car that drives by it to determine if it's speeding, right? So for at least one snapshot in time, it is memorializing your car in that location. Now, it may have a logarithm or an algorithm that says it's not 6 miles over, so let's delete this picture. But it also may have one that says it was above the speed limit, but it wasn't in the violation of 6 miles per hour. So we're going to save this. I don't know if they have. This is pure hyperbole on my part. It could be. It may not be.
Well, those are important questions to ask if it does come back, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think they're important questions to know the answers to even now, because I want to know if every time I drive by Nathaniel Green Middle School, or I think it's an elementary school actually, on Truxtun Ave, is a picture of my ugly face and my ugly car being warehoused somewhere in South Carolina, where
and that's my next question. Is there a database that associates that license plates with the driver, so that in essence you can be tracked? Okay, you were here at that time, or is it just a set of photos that aren't associated with a person on a routine basis? And then where is that database? What are the security protections for that database? Who has access to that database, and what can government officials do with that database? Those are really big questions. Do you know if any of those were addressed in the school zone speed cameras or in this legislation?
There's some language, but the majority of what you just expressed concern about, I suspect, would be in the contract with the third party that we hired, and what their job is to monitor these cameras and send out tickets to those who violate based on the guidelines that we give them. Now, in that contract, I would like to think, and I can of course get a copy of the contract, but I would like to think that there are parameters on there. Now, if you are busted and it's 6 miles over the limit is when they hit you because of all the initial outcry. So they upped it to 6 miles over. So if you're busted for 6 miles and they send you a ticket, they clearly have to hold on to that photograph for at least the
Right.
time that
They've
your case
associated
is
that
being
photo with
adjudicated.
some name for sure, but I'm saying, do they do that for every photo that's taken?
That's a fantastic question. And that was, in fact, another concern that was expressed, and it may have been during the speed camera debate, where will those cameras be able to then confirm that the inspection sticker is valid, or that the little registration tag on your license plate, is that valid? Like, technologically speaking, that's very simple to do. They probably just add another module onto the program they're already using, and boom, now it's doing that. Clearly, it's already tied into the DMV database.
Alcohol, cannon recognition.
I mean, there's as far as our imaginations can go, technology can go 10 steps further. So any scenario you can envision in your mind, you're not creative enough as a computer and to be able to do that, and as technology is.
All right, last question for you, changing gears, just give you the final word, Rep. I know you were a co-sponsor of the bill. We had David Place on last month about the bill to sort of end the corporate welfare handout poaching.
Yes.
Bill, what's the status of that bill?
I believe that bill was heard. There's not a huge appetite for it, and for a lot of reasons, most of which I don't have to even get into. But when we have these types of debates about economic development and just generally speaking across the nation, a lot of the opposition we hear from our friends on the left is that it's corporate welfare, therefore it's bad, and we have the inverse in Rhode Island. It's crony corporate welfare that we administer mostly through the Commerce Department. Crony socialism. Well, that's where we're clearly headed. So the Democratic Party or machine of Rhode Island embraces that corporate welfare, and we've seen over the years that there's certainly favoritism. There's certainly some inappropriate deals made, things of that nature, and not in Rhode Island. But I think the oddness of it is that, why is it that the Republicans, who are supposed to be in the bag for the corporations, we're these horrible shills for the corporate America? Right. Why are we the only ones who are screaming about corporate welfare? Mike, we've tried in years past, almost every year I've been in that legislature, whenever we're seeking to amend the budget in a certain way where we need to find funds, that one of the first places we go is to corporate welfare. We want to take money out of that pot because it's being misspent or not spent or reallocated.
Even the left doesn't like it. It's just the insider cronies in power want their backs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all.
But yet our amendments never pass. So the left does realize that corporate welfare is their friend, because those corporations and the people who work for them will also be their friends.
I'll tell you,
or at least the friends of their campaigns.
My counterpart in Nevada from about 5-6 years ago. This is how powerful this corporate welfare thing is. Nevada actually passed a constitutional amendment. No state funds for any form of, however they define corporate welfare, handouts.
Yeah.
Zero. Guess how they got around that?
Oh.
Just like what Biden's doing with states. The states then, just for no reason, gave oodles of what's appropriated money to the cities, to the counties, and the counties gave away the corporate welfare.
Hey, you know what? Water is always going to find the path of least resistance, and so is money, especially if it's taxpayer money.
Cronies just rig everything. It's unbelievable.
It is. And, you could, I don't know anything about Nevada and how they came to that decision, but, almost assuredly, I can tell you someone realized there was a built-in loophole. And while on one hand, they were looking real good for shutting down corporate welfare, their friends were still being fed through the counties.
Right.
Again, conjecture on my part, but I've been an elected official I'm going into my 12th year. I'm pretty jaded, but that's really more like pragmatism.
Representative Mike Chippendale, thanks for joining me again on
Thank
In
you,
the
Mike.
Dugout. We'll have you back soon. Let's go Red Sox.
Appreciate it. Let's go Sox.
All right. Thanks, Red.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks again. So, well, if we learn more about Sabina Matos, we'll have some more people on to learn about here. Again, the big question, I want to know which Dominican baseball team she's a fan of. Licey, Escogido, Estrellas, or Aguilas. I need to know. I played for Escogido. Need to know if she was a fan or not. Okay, and we'll keep you posted on everything else. We'll see you tomorrow. Dr. Andrew Boston tomorrow on In the Dugout. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next day. We'll see you next game, which is tomorrow. Opening day, we hope, for the Red Sox, weather permitting.